spoiler review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the second of the Spider-Verse trilogy, as it's going to be. Started with Into the Spider-Verse, will round off with Beyond the Spider-Verse,
Yes.
as
She'll
we
come out
find
next
out
March,
right
I
at the end
believe.
of this movie. Next March, is it that soon?
Yes, I do believe so. So yes, obviously heavy spoilers for this conversation, people. So
Heavy spoilers. Although this isn't a heavy spoiler, it is a wonderful, wonderful movie. I mean,
yes.
Into the Spider-Verse changed the game with animated movies. This one almost takes it to another level,
Yeah.
technically, and I couldn't be more impressed, really.
Yeah. So the varied animation styles, the music, um, the meta references, so many things. This was just a huge, big love for the character of Spider-Man. Every iteration that you could think of, from video games to animated shows to the movies themselves, were represent the comics, all were represented. Except, my version that I'm named for today, which I just wanted to shed some light on. So that's why I had, my name be Valerie the librarian. So
Okay.
I'd like to think this iteration of Jessica Drew is a nod to that character, because the first ever Spider-Woman was a black woman with an afro in the 70s, and her name was Valerie the librarian. There was a promotional comic book that came out, made by, it was like in conjunction with the Electric Company. So it was the Electric Company working with Marvel, and they did this comic for Super Spidey stories, where Spider-Man, I think he's just defeated like the Vulture, and he decides to take off his suit and like sunbathe on a rooftop. He webs up his suit in a web like sitting nearby, but it falls, and it falls right into the hands of this librarian named Valerie. She is a fan of Spider-Man. She is inspired by him. So she decides, well, I want to help out the city too. I could be Spider-Man. So she puts the suit on and she goes back to her apartment and she's like, well, how can I wall crawl like Spider-Man? I don't have any powers. So she takes some suction cups from her dartboard and puts them on her hands, and she's like practicing her wall crawling. And then Spider-Man, since his suit is missing, he goes and gets his spare suit, and he comes across Valerie crawling on the walls. And ultimately, instead of saying, "Hey, give me back my suit. What are you doing, lady?" He teams up with her, and they end up fighting crime together, and she ends up like helping him out, saving the day. Even like the little cover is her swinging in to save a tied up Spider-Man from the Vulture. And so I'd like to think that this version of Jessica Drew is a combination of the Jessica Drew from the comics, who did have a whole run where she was pregnant, and a combination of the first ever Spider-Woman, this wonderful black woman named Valerie. And so just kind of combining those two characters. And also Valerie swings in fighting the Vulture, and we get a very similar scene in this film Across the Spider-Verse of Jessica Drew swinging in fighting the Vulture. So definitely just a nod to the first ever Spider-Woman being this black librarian named Valerie.
Yeah, I think that is probably very accurate and very
Yes.
um, true to actually what probably happened in the movie.
Yes.
Um,
So like
or was the case.
I haven't heard any like concrete confirmation that like that's what they were trying to do and that's why they made Jessica Drew black, but I just assume, especially since we didn't see this version of her amongst the other spider people. So,
Yeah, I
yes.
like that. I like that.
Yeah.
What a nice little opening bit of information there for
Yeah.
our review of Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, it is it's staggeringly good animation.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that it makes you realize just how mediocre every other animation form looks now
Yeah,
when you
to
look
just
at this and Into the Spider-Verse and just what they're able to do in merging the different styles of animation.
Yes. I mean, Gwen's world being this watercolor world and the colors changing in
Yeah,
terms of like, I think they described it to Haley as her world being like a mood ring. So like the colors changing as emotions are being revealed and shown. and that kind of driving how the world looks around her in her universe.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating
Yeah.
from a technical standpoint. The entire movie, um, it's really, I mean, it's not that it's a good, not that it's a good job. It's like that because the story's bad or anything like that. But I'm so thankful it, the animation of it is as good as it is, because it actually matches up with the quality of the story you get anyway.
Yeah.
Like, Miles Morales was somebody I was not familiar with before I saw Into the Spider-Verse. I don't think too many people,
Yeah.
to be honest, who didn't read comics were particularly familiar with who Miles Morales was, but he's quickly becoming a particular favorite of a particular
Yeah.
generation in terms of Spider-Man,
And there was a
who
whole metaphor
inspired
on
by him.
that in the film, which has been heavily talked about recently on TikTok, if you were on TikTok in that on that side of nerd talk and things like that. That yes, the filmmakers themselves have come out and said that Miguel and kind of just the Spider Universe rejecting Miles, telling him he doesn't belong there, telling him he's not going to fit with them, he can't work with them, is a huge meta commentary on the fact that the character of Miles in his introduction into comics was very much not accepted, and had a lot of racist kind of people really against him, even joining the Spider family and being a version of Spider-Man, and not wanting him because
Yeah.
they thought he was some kind of Peter Parker erasure. um
I think
so
it's really clever for them to put that
yeah.
into this movie,
Yeah.
and to have it be from such a really significant character in this particular movie.
Yeah.
That Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, Oscar Isaac's character,
Yeah.
is in this movie. He's the leader of the elite team of spider people who
Yeah.
sort out all the multiversal issues, because do we really want to even try and explain what's going on with the multiverse? No. We
Well, I
should
mean, just
never
kind of based
attempt
off
to
of the
explain
first, yeah.
what's going on.
Generally, just you can look at it from, okay, in the first movie, Kingpin's Collider opened up the multiverse. Our characters thought they closed it and fixed it, but they didn't. There were still some other anomalies that got out into other universes. So they're still dealing with this problem. And so now Miguel has gone and he's looking for these anomalies and trying to close the loop back and send these people back to their places where they belong. So essentially, like, No Way Home, and, basically just continuing what we thought was fixed in the first movie.
They even make a No Way Home joke.
Yes, I mean, and the references. I personally saw more Toby references than any other kind of Spider-Man. Um, but all of the Spider people, even, and obviously it's Sony, so they're going to really kind of push the references of their properties more. So Venom was getting a lot of love as well. Um, and on all of their Spider-Man movies. So,
Yeah.
you have to just kind
No,
of, so
there's
so interesting that, yeah, they actually pulled, I think there were essentially two references to MCU's Spider-Man, with what Miguel says about Doctor Strange and that whole situation, and then uh seeing a character from that Spider-Man with Donald Glover coming in as the Prowler, and seeing very much in the vein of movies that people love, with cartoons and real people coming together, a la, Who Framed Roger Rabbit and things like that.
yeah.
Seeing Donald Glover in this movie dressed as the Prowler because he is Uncle Aaron in the MCU Spider-Man universe. So that was a really fun nod. Everyone in my theater lost it when they saw him.
Yeah,
And
it's
also
it's
just
it's really interesting how he would actually just have been approached to just kind of come in and do that.
yes.
I think
And I
really,
mean,
but
he is credited as being the inspiration for Miles Morales even existing. because they everyone references that episode of Community where he gets out of bed and he's wearing the Spider-Man shirt, and that in turn spawned this campaign of let's make a new Spider-Man, a black Spider-Man, and let's have Donald Glover play him. And so the creators of the comics, Brian Michael Bendis, I think he saw that and said, okay, I'm going to create this new Spider-Man, all because he saw that episode of Community with Donald Glover wearing a Spider-Man shirt,
Yeah.
and this kind of call from people to create a new black Spider-Man. um and also it just kind of all of this speaks to Stanley's one of Stanley's favorite things about the Spider-Man character, which wasn't even something planned. um when they ended up, he came up with the character of Spider-Man, and then when they drew him with uh completely covered. You can't see his hands, you can't see his feet, you can't see his face, nothing. So then that out of that, Stanley really loved the idea that any kid could see themselves as Spider-Man, no matter what color skin they had, no matter what they look like. Anybody could see themselves as the character. So to then bring in a character like Miles, I think that so beautifully speaks to what Stanley loved about what that costume did for his character. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, I think
yeah.
it's much easier for anybody to see themselves as Spider-Man now because there's infinite amounts of Spider people.
Exactly, exactly. So, um, yeah, I mean, look at Valerie the librarian that gets people to kind of go seek out all these different spider people they
Yeah.
didn't even know about. Like Spider Punk was a standout character. So many fun characters that maybe a lot of people didn't know about unless they were really into the comics, unless they played the games, all kinds of things. So just to open up that world, like that was a really fun thing. But just getting back to Donald Glover, yeah, like him being in this movie is kind of a bigger uh it entails so many other layers than just him being
It
Aaron
does.
Davis
Yeah.
in the MCU. It's the fact that he inspired the character. People wanted him to play Miles Morales. He ultimately went on to voice the character in an animated version of it. And now is that speaking to some things that could happen in the MCU now? Um, and play into a live action Miles Morales with him being Uncle Aaron and all of that. So uh just the layers of seeing him sit there. He only literally had like two lines.
Yeah.
Like it's rude to
No,
stare. Like three lines, like it's rude to stare, and then I think Spider Punk was the one who caught him, and he says, "Oh, I tripped. That's how you caught me." And then when, everyone's booing, he just boos. But if you really know, like, so many just fun layers to just seeing him in this movie.
it does. It could be very significant.
Yeah.
It could be simply fun.
Yes, and either way, I'm excited. I was excited to see it,
Yeah.
regardless
And
of what that means for future things. It was perfect.
so much of this movie, I think, is a Spider-Man fan's fantasy, a Spider-Man fan's dream.
Yeah.
There's so many things to catch. There's so many things for basic Spider-Man fans to catch as well in references. Like we say, there's jokes about No Way Home. There's plenty of references to your Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, your
Mhm.
Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, things that most people who are going to watch this movie will know well even if they've never read any Spider-Man or played
Yeah.
any Spider-Man video games or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you're still going to feel involved. You're still going to feel like you get the little, nuggets they're giving you in reference form, in joke form sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, because there is so much going on all the time because the style of the animation is constantly kind of
Yeah.
popping and snapping and
Moving. Yes. Yeah.
switching up and lights are coming everywhere and it's kind of a lot of strobe lighting really when you
Yeah,
think
I did
about it
see I
because
did see because I follow this girl who does have, like, sensory issues, and a lot of flashing lights really give her headache and make her feel nauseous, and there have, I guess, been enough complaints that they are re-releasing another version of the film that has less of that stroby kind of
yeah,
things
because
happening in the
there is a
movie.
lot. There is
Yes,
a
I
lot
mean,
of it.
even she expressed kind of having difficulty watching the movements of Spider-Punk because of his frame rate. Also,
Yeah.
just kind of, just messing with her eyes in terms of, what she deals with. So, yeah, they are releasing another version of the film that will have less of that sensory kind of issues for people because of all that. I actually saw the movie in 4DX, so it was a lot.
Oof.
Um, just think of Gwen's drumming solo at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, your chair was
Ooh. Yeah, I
the
can
whole
imagine.
drumming, and then the whole
That's
chase sequence was non-stop. 'Cause you that
that's
chase goes on
heavy.
that chase goes on forever, it feels like, so my chair was
It
just
does.
going.
It does. That
Yeah,
is that's pretty intense. I mean, I
it
haven't ever
it was
watched a
very.
movie in that format. I'm
Yeah,
not
you
sure
have
whether
to
I would
pick
actually
you have to
enjoy
pick
doing it or
you have
not.
to pick the right one. People have said, like, The Little Mermaid in 4DX is really good. I missed the 4DX of The Little Mermaid. Um, but Top Gun Maverick was the best in 4DX. It was perfect.
I'm
But
just
this
not sure
one,
whether I would enjoy something like that or whether it would actually make me feel ill.
it depends on the movie. It really depends on what movie you choose because I think you're not gonna know kind of the choreography of the chair in the moment.
No.
But I think you can look at something and know that it's gonna be so I thought, okay, Spider-Man, it's gonna be a lot of kind of more swinging action and my chair kind of leaning with them swinging. I'm gonna feel that energy. Um, but obviously crazy running around action sequences, my chair. So I kind of thought it would be like that, and it was. With something like The Little Mermaid, I can assume that it's gonna be a lot of the water effects, which are just mostly just mist, and swimming stuff, which is not gonna be super kind of jolty and crazy, and maybe some stuff
Yeah.
on a ship. So that would be, better. So I think it's easy if you think about kind of the movie, you can gauge what's best for 40X. I kind of all surmised it was going to be crazy, and sure enough was.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you expect that, but it's what you kind of love about
Yes, I
this
had
movie
fun
is
with it in
it's
40X because I felt really just like, really
yeah,
into the action.
you
So yeah.
love its completely insane chaos style.
Yes.
Because it really is like that. You said, you mentioned Spider Punk's frame rates, the different characters because they're drawn differently, because
Yeah.
they are animated differently. Some have different frame rates to other characters. It's such a, I wanna watch making of documentaries about these Spider-Verse movies because how they are put together
Yeah.
is just unlike any other animated movie. It actually makes me, I think, more into the process of animation
Yes.
than
And
any other
combining all these
animated
different
movie.
styles. Yeah.
Yeah, than any other animated movie has
Mhm.
ever made me feel before. I feel more kind of into knowing exactly how you do that in
Yeah.
this movie and in Into the
Yes.
Spider-Verse than I have ever done with animated movies before. All that technical stuff aside, which really does for me just help the movie
Yeah.
elevate itself to unbelievably wonderful quality. But the story itself, to carry on this story from where we left off, in a sense of kind of, yes, Miles had seemingly, stopped Kingpin's collider, saved the day. His team had gone off to their other worlds again, their
Yes,
own
and has been
universes.
Spider-Manning for a whole year without any issues.
Yeah, has been doing fine, but obviously not had any visits from his friends
Yeah,
or anything like that. There's been nothing like that. So he's feeling a little bit kind of on his own.
yeah,
He's feeling a little bit, he's enjoying being Spider-Man, sure, but
yeah.
he wishes he had his
His
Spider
friends,
family back.
and particularly Gwen as well. Um,
Obviously, Gwen,
yeah.
because you could all shut up being like, oh, they're just best friends. They're not just best friends. People are allowed to be romantically interested in each other. I've seen this
Yes,
multiple times,
yes,
happen with
yeah.
with with other
There was
characters as well.
there was actually a
Apparently,
debate.
nobody's allowed to have romantic interest in movies
Yes,
anymore.
there was definitely flirtations there, they definitely liked each other. But now there's also a debate just thrown out there that, did Gwen and Hobie hook up?
100%. 100%. Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Spider-Punk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good as well. Here's something I actually really like about Spider-Punk and Daniel Kaluuya playing him is thank God Daniel Kaluuya uses his actual voice.
No, they asked him. Liz told him specifically, lean into it, lean into the Cockney, lean
Good,
into the rhyming language, the rhyming slang, do all of that. Like they told him,
good.
if we need to pull it back, we'll pull it back, but just throw everything out there, everything you know about the language, about the the dialect and all of that, just throw all of it out there.
It,
So,
it's I loved it. I loved that sort of stuff, and I love the fact that sometimes because they said something, Spider-Punk said a phrase that I use an awful lot, but never do on here, um, because I just feel like it doesn't make sense unless you know what it is. But I say I haven't got a Scooby Doo like a lot. I say that a lot,
yes,
and
well,
it
they
just
even
means I
put a
haven't got a
little
clue. I don't
clue.
know.
Yeah, it's the rhyming slang, and which I learned from a great Sidney Poitier movie, To Sir with Love. Where they actually explain the rhyming slang to him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
But they
okay."
did it in this movie as
And
well. They
they
put a
put a
little
little, like,
comic
definition box that
card,
tells you Scooby Doo rhyming slang, like,
but
yeah,
they did
means
that for
clue.
multiple things throughout the movie.
Yes,
Just
yeah,
little, like, few frames worth of just,
mhm,
here's a bit of an explanation, catch it if you catch it, but if you don't catch it, doesn't really matter because we've
yeah,
already moved on. But it's
yes,
just an extra detail
so
that
good.
is wonderful. I also never thought I'd hear the word Manden get used in a superhero movie, which is not a word I use because that's quite a. It's not really my style of word, really, but it just means group of friends. Really, that's all
Yeah,
it means. Um, like the guys, the Manden.
yeah, mhm,
Someone would
yeah.
say, but Spider Punk uses that.
Yeah, and then
Um,
I hate the AM, I hate the PM, but the PM actually being the prime minister because,
yes,
he's just very
it's
much of a,
great.
a rebel. But yes, that was kind of a whole debate that I saw kind of come out of that. And then somebody, was like, oh, you guys are gross even talking about this. They're like 15 and this whole kind of thing. So then I made a whole like TikTok about breaking down, okay, well, what can we surmise about these ages? They never say Hobie's age. We know that Miles is 15 because he says it in the movie. We
Gwen's
know
definitely
we know that
older.
Gwen says she's 15 months older than him in the first movie. So she's
Okay.
16. So, not knowing Hobie's age and, because there's talk about her staying over at his place or staying over in his universe, um, I think, based on who Hobie is, just kind of this rebellious person, you could see him being a 17-year-old living on his own.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes. So she's 16, he's 17. It's not this creepy, like he's an old man and she's a kid kind of energy happening. So,
Why are
yeah, it was
people
like
even thinking like that?
exactly. So it was a whole debate. Like I had to make a video about it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure if you listen to the things, this is probably how old these people are. So don't stress about it too
Yeah.
much. But yeah.
But no,
So
I really liked everybody. I liked opening with Gwen's
yes.
background in Gwen's story, getting to know, her and her dad really well, and the struggle there of kind of,
Yes.
her
Of
dad
him
finding
believing
out
and thinking that
she
she's
is,
responsible and she has to hide it from her dad and that they're so
yeah.
close and she has to lie to him. Because I've seen people like really calling out Gwen, calling her the villain of this movie and
I think he's
saying that
unfair.
she doesn't want they don't want her with Miles and how dare her, she betrayed him, all of these things. And I think, yes, there were things that she did that were not the best friend things to do in terms of her relationship with Miles. But you have to think about the whole emotional journey that she's going through, the whole complex layers of things she's dealing with. I mean, we see her, she's already struggling with the loss of her best friend on top of feeling guilty about it because the only reason he was in that situation is because he wanted to be just like her. So that's what she's
Yeah.
dealing with in terms of having to lie to someone who she loves, then him finding out the truth and not hesitating to pull a gun on her and believing the worst thing about her. So that's what she's dealing with on an emotional aspect, on top of also missing Miles, who is the one person that she's connected with since losing Peter. So give her some credit, give her some empathy, to the fact that there were things driving her decisions. Then as soon as Miguel comes in, he is immediately blaming her for the multiverse damage. So now because she has all this loss, she has nothing left. The only thing she can lean into and focus on is, okay, Miguel is telling me this multiversal situation was partly my fault. So let me lean into this mission in trying to fix it. So this is
Yeah.
my mission. This is what I need to do. But I also miss Miles. So then in turn, so she does go see Miles, and you could understand her wanting to spare him from learning this canon event, from learning these things. And she obviously didn't tell him for reasons of protecting him. She obviously didn't tell him because it's her being even a part of this whole society is her trying to fix a mistake that she feels like she's made. And think about how hard it must be, the fact that she feels like the relationship with her father is so beyond repair that she just has to let him die in this canon event.
Yeah.
Imagine the
And she,
pain and heartbreak of that. Like, there's no way I can ever repair this relationship with my father. He thinks I'm this killer, so I have to let him die. So imagine that is all of the emotional things this character is dealing with. And the fact that people can't have a little bit of empathy to consider that and have that be a driving force for why she does some of the things she does in terms of Miles and keeping things from him to essentially protect him.
yeah.
And people just really just writing her off as a villain. I'm just like, poor girl. Like,
It's
I see you, Gwen. I understand what you're going through, Gwen. I have some empathy for you. So
well, it's a very unfair thing. It's a very, very unfair
yeah.
thing to think. Absolutely. I mean, really, the movie, or this second movie, is, I think it's, if the first movie, if Into the Spider-Verse was about kind of not self-preservation, assurance of kind of who you are,
Yeah.
and discovering who you are. This is about keeping it. This movie's about kind of keeping that mentality in the face of
Adversity, in the face of people telling you you're wrong. Yeah.
unmatched adversary, in the face of completely crazy situation. I mean, our kind of main... Does the movie have a main antagonist? There's a good question. But our main supposed antagonist, although does he even really do anything wrong in the movie, is the Spot, voiced by Jason Schwartzmann, who I
Yes.
find really quite funny.
Yes. The fact that he is kind of ridiculous in the beginning, only to become really frightening.
Really
Was
frightening.
such a good turn. Yeah.
Really frightening. Really
And just the design as
powerful.
well. Yeah.
The design is very creepy. The design does look like something out of some sort of horror game.
Yes.
Because he's just a white figure full of just large black portal spots.
Yeah.
He can travel anywhere in the multiverse. He can travel just through portals in the same space.
Yeah.
He's confusing for me because I don't have that sort of brain. But I found him very engaging as somebody that's obsessed with defeating Miles because he blames Miles. Because of the Collider situation at the end of Into the Spider-Verse.
But also for me, that was just huge. And I think they did it because I think a lot of people loved that moment as much as I did, is the fact that no, he's the guy, he's the bagel guy.
Yeah.
He ends up being the guy that Miles hits with the bagel. And that scene for me is always so hilarious that he gets hit and you just see the word bagel.
He's
so
just
the fact that he is that guy is just like an
a
added
seemingly
so
seeming nobody from
yes.
the first movie. But like you said, by the end of this movie, he has gotten this level of multiversal energy kind of power to look like he can.
Yes, and the
really
fact that he has nothing
break things.
And he has nothing to lose, on top of the fact that his only driving motivation is because he was made fun of and seen as a villain of the week. And so he's just trying to prove that he's not. So he's
trying to prove himself that he's serious.
So he's not trying to get anything. He's not trying to
No,
gain anything. He just wants to prove that he is a formidable villain. So he's going to do
he's
the
not
worst thing he
even
can.
really. He's not even really doing anything necessarily wrong against anybody else. Even though, yes, okay, he's upset with Miles, and he has a few here and there fights with Miles, but it's all like you say, it's all about himself.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily against anybody by the end of this movie. He's just obsessed with thinking himself more seriously powerful than he is.
Yes. And, like,
And this
Miles
is what
didn't
he tries to get.
inherently or purposefully create him, but he blames Miles. He puts Miles in the shoes of the person that made him lose everything he lost.
Yeah,
Has lost a lot, but he needs to put a person to that, and so he just chooses Miles because Miles was
yeah,
there. Miles helped in blowing up the collider. Miles threw the bagel at him. So he's not taking his position to be somebody who was working with Olivia Octavius, who was this evil entity, and being there working on this machine that would cause all of this potential harm to the universe. He doesn't take any responsibility in any of the factors that caused him to end up like this. He just puts it all on Miles and now has to prove to Miles that he is a worthy adversary, and that's his driving force. So the
yeah.
fact that he has nothing to lose, it makes him even more scary.
And really, for Miles, though, this movie it's about him having faith in himself when nobody
Yeah.
else does.
And I love that he
And I
knows
mean
himself so well.
when nobody else does. When
Yes, and I
even
love mhm.
occasionally his mum and dad lose faith in who he is. He has to have it in himself, and him going to the headquarters of all the spider people to Spidertopia or whatever they call it. In Miguel's world,
Yeah.
and discovering everybody there, and then being told that he should have never been a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The spider that bit him was from another dimension.
Yeah.
It was meant for that dimension's
Mhm.
Miles
Miles
Morales,
Morales.
not
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You are the original anomaly. And because the elite spider team headed by Miguel Oscar Isaac is really just focused on protecting the canon of Spider-Man.
Yes, yeah.
That's what they are. That's what they are focused
They're
on. It's
they're
why I
they're
think it's
focused on the wrong thing. They're focused on the wrong thing. Miguel has really tapped into their grief moment, and made them only focus on that. Because if these horrific events that happen to them or are going to happen to them have no purpose, then they mean nothing. A lot of these people feel like these events had to happen to make me be the spider person. Without that, I am not this person who has saved so many people, who has done all these wonderful things, who has this life. So I need to give this canon event this lost purpose. Otherwise, what's the point?
and
And
this is
that's what Miguel ends up kind of tapping into for all of them and has them focusing on, so that like someone like Peter B. Parker can't see that because of Miles even existing, because of his interaction with Miles, he was able to fix his relationship with Mary Jane and have a child. And he's been living a happy life for a whole year without his world breaking down like Miguel's, without his world being destroyed. And he wouldn't have that without Miles, without the original anomaly. And Peter B. Parker can't even think about, well, Miles distracted my life and it made it better, and nothing has happened to my universe. So there should be another way to think about this. Peter B.
yeah,
Parker
yeah,
can't
but
even think about that because he's so focused on the loss that he suffered and why that is so important to protect.
yeah, but I feel like he is a conflicted individual
Yeah.
because of his fondness for Miles.
Yeah. But
I
he's
just
still very
like,
much about the mission and the importance
of
of
course he
protecting
is,
these
of course
events.
he is. I just like how it is very understandable why Miguel is the way he is.
Yeah.
because we actually get his own internal thoughts. We actually get his own story of, I tried putting myself back, or I can't remember exactly what he does. Basically, he tries,
The Miguel
and
in another
or does he
universe.
die and then he tries
A
putting
Miguel,
himself back
yes,
in his
a
own
Miguel
life or
from
something
a
like that?
version of him from a different universe ends up getting killed. So he steps into that universe and pretends to be
And it
that version of
breaks.
him.
Yeah.
And he's with his daughter and he's happy. But because he's not even meant to be there and take over that role, that person was meant to be dead. He his world started to just disintegrate around him.
Yeah. The place breaks. So this is what's caused his obsession, really,
Yes.
with ensuring that good and bad, but mainly bad because he's inherently focused on negatives and death and
Yeah.
things like this, happen
Yeah.
to everyone. Otherwise, the multiverse breaks.
Yeah.
Because if one universe breaks, then another one can. And certainly in this particular instance, when you've had this collider situation that isn't quite closed, that is open, that is all over the place, they explain it as kind of one little strand of web can affect another little strand of web like that.
Yeah.
And if one breaks, everything can break and the entire thing collapses.
Yeah.
And this is what he's trying to protect. This is why it seems like a reasonable way of thinking. And this is what makes him, I think, a really good kind of central antagonist for the movie.
Yeah.
Because his not his motivation, but his reason is painfully understandable.
Yeah.
When you consider his own situation. He's not actually against Miles. He just, according to the system, Miles shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So Miles can't exist
Yes,
as
but you
far
have to
as
think
his
about
as far as his very single-minded approach is considered. But
yes.
you can understand why it is like that.
Exactly. So and the fact that like it's hard to even focus on other ways of things happening. The fact that like you nobody pays attention to the fact that Miles has existed for a year. He's touched the lives of other people who have been
Yeah, and
living out
he's
their lives
doing
for a year
fine.
and nothing has happened. But because they're so focused on, what Miguel is telling them to focus on, that's they're looking at the wrong thing. And until not until the end of the movie do they see another way.
And
So,
this is why I think that kind of "you don't belong" thing is such a it's a wonderful mirroring of
yeah.
the real world attitude towards the
Yeah.
character of Miles Morales for this movie to use,
And even in
and for
Into the
this movie to use
Spider-Verse,
that.
all
Yeah,
the other more
because
experienced spider people had little faith in him when it came to the big mission,
yeah,
and they didn't really want him to be a part because they didn't think he had enough experience, only for him to step up and prove himself.
but because you have Miles there keeping on saying, um, I'm tired of everyone telling me how my story's gonna
Yeah.
go. I
Nah, I'm
am
gonna do my own thing.
Spider-Man. I am
Yeah.
Miles Morales. I'm gonna do my own thing. It's been working fine. So shut up and let me be Spider-Man because I'm
Yeah.
Spider-Man. And it's that kind of self-assurance, that
Yeah.
self-confidence that is the real central part of this movie. It's taking the discovery and the gain of that confidence that you got from the first movie,
Yeah.
and in this one just solidifying that, so you're totally just with Miles and his mentality of, well, yeah, I don't get why this is so serious. Why is it serious now but wasn't like 4 months ago? It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. Like,
Yeah.
what's changed? Why now? Because it doesn't make sense, really. Why can't why do we have to go through all this pain? Being Spider-Man doesn't just mean you have to do this, 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 and this.
Yeah.
Anyone can be
But that's
Spider-Man.
what I'm saying. They are so hung up on the fact that like this death had purpose in my journey, so I have to protect that. Otherwise, I lost this person for nothing. So the fact
Yeah.
that they're holding on to that concept is what is making them really see Miguel's way of thinking and not anything
Yeah,
else. So
and
that's
you
kind of
can
my
understand it.
thought process on why, these spider people are so easily like, Miguel might have a point. We probably do have to do these things in order to protect our futures, because if these things don't happen, we essentially maybe aren't who we are.
And I
Um,
think it's a real shame, particularly like you said, for Peter B. Parker,
yeah.
who really has a good life going now, a really
Yeah.
happy life going now, but still just
Is
can't
stuck in this
get over the
fear.
fact
Yeah.
that is he a worthy Spider-Man anymore?
Yeah.
Because it didn't go the way it was supposed to.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, that sort of message, that sort of attitude can be put on any sort of story, any sort of life. You have it in your own life. Things don't always go the way they are supposed to. Things don't always go the way other people tell you they are supposed to go. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean you are any less.
And
That
that
doesn't
doesn't
mean
mean,
you
yeah.
are unworthy of being who you believe yourself to be.
Yes, and
And
that
what
doesn't
a
mean there's not
very,
another
very
way.
positive message for this movie
Yeah.
to have.
And that doesn't
Ultimately, it ends
Mhm.
in quite a stark cliffhanger,
Yes, like,
but
my theater was like,
that's the
"What?"
positive. That's the
Yeah, my theater was
message.
not happy, with just ending on a cliffhanger. But yeah, I mean, and that doesn't mean there's also that kind of message. That doesn't mean there's not another way. Like, we're dealing with
No,
this
there's
we're
always
dealing
another way.
we're dealing with this multiversal situation, so why is Miguel's way the only way of handling it?
Yeah.
Let's look at other options here. So yeah,
Surely in these infinite universes, someone somewhere has found a different way of doing things.
yes, and just to go back quickly, because I think we're probably gonna wrap this up soon, is that you were talking about the animation style, the Lego animation. I just want to shout
Oh,
out this
yes.
14-year-old kid who designed all of that. He
Oh,
actually
I
animated.
saw that, yeah.
Yes, he had done an animation doing the whole Across the Spider-Verse trailer in Legos, and they saw that and hired him to do all the Lego sequences.
That's
So this is just a
men
14-year-old kid who was
that's
using this old
insane.
computer that his dad built for him to animate that. So I thought that was really cool. So
It really, really is.
yeah, yeah.
And it's just one of the many, many
Really cool little
styles of
things in here.
animation that is
Yeah.
in this movie, but, um,
But that
yeah,
twist at the end,
deserves a lot of credit.
I love where we're gonna go, because this twist was a cool surprise, unexpected. The fact that, and really just messing with us a little bit in terms of, we think Miles went home, but then you look at the computer and you go back to that scene of the computer saying, scanning where his spider was from, and that's where it sent him. And you see Gwen out the window, and his mom says he changed his hair, and she's talking about things, and she doesn't remember what he's talking about, and this whole thing. So I love the build up to, like, the realization that, oh my gosh, he's not in his same universe. He's in a universe where his father's dead, where his uncle's still alive, where his uncle's not the Prowler, but he is. And they even have a different voice actor for that version of Miles. I think it's um the guy from Moonlight. He's a Dominican actor. So the fact
Okay.
that people are making the comparison that, in Miles's little fantasy where he says, where his mom says something about, "Oh, I think the Spider-Man, some people are saying he's Puerto Rican," and he's like, no, I think he might be Dominican." And so then they actually have a Dominican actor voicing that other version of Miles, and that's why his Morales sounds a lot,
Okay.
smoother. Especially, it makes sense for this version of Miles, who was predominantly raised by his mother and his father really not being in the picture, that he would lean more towards that. Um, so just like a little detail like that to focus on, I think is just cool enough, that the fact that you have a whole
Yeah.
different voice actor for this version of Miles, and like how is he gonna get out of the situation. But then you also have to think about little clues that Into the Spider-Verse gave you when he tied Peter B. Parker to that punching bag, and he's able to get out of it and says, you know, it's always in the hands. Like, you got to look at the hands. And then we see Miles with his hands trying to use his electricity to get out of this. So it might be a
I mean,
similar
that
thing of
is
him.
how the movie ends, but
Yeah.
it's pretty shocking, really. I mean,
Yeah.
expected, yes, that he was in the wrong universe, I suppose, but I wasn't necessarily thinking it was going to be immediately violent, and immediately kind of, you realize that, oh, wait, this universe doesn't actually have a Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's like this whole, things are on fire,
Because
there's a bunch of
this
crime, like
universe's Spider-Man was supposed to be this universe's Miles.
yes, props to New rock stars. I watched their whole big breakdown, and they actually showed that in the spots kind of flashback and explaining the relationship between him and Miles and how they're connected, is that 42 Spider was sitting right behind that braided version of Miles, ready to like probably bite him, only for it to then be transported to our
Yeah.
Miles's world. So yeah, because of that whole situation, that version of Miles never came to be and ended up being the Prowler. So just how the layers are going to kind of unfold in this next movie, I'm really excited to see and really curious to see. We didn't talk too much about Jessica Drew. I really liked her. She, for being this like pregnant woman in the fight in the battle, I'm
And
not going to act like I know a ton about the comics, but once this movie was coming out, once I did see it, I did kind of look into that run of hers where she like just didn't had a hard time kind of giving up superhero life once she became pregnant. So there is a run of her actually fighting crime to make money for her future child and all of these things. So I like that they played into that. And her being the kind of trusted right hand, but also having a lot of agency in her own right to, you know, convince Miguel to take on Gwen, to train Gwen, and make that hard decision to let Miguel send her back after she failed on those missions. So, I like her as a
yeah.
character, and she's a good enough person of a character. Like they made her, have the value of a good person that you are maybe considering that she might flip in the end and be on the side of Gwen's new band that she's put together and maybe not be in Miguel's way of thinking. So I think
Yeah, and just
they set it up that she could
realize.
potentially take that turn and realize there is another way. It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be,
and that's
you
all.
know.
That's all it is. That's
Yeah.
how you have to assume this
Yeah.
trilogy of movies is going to end, by most Spider people realizing that,
Yeah.
of course, there's another way. There's all these different ways. There's infinite different ways. If you are Spider-Man, you are Spider-Man. You don't have to have this,
Have
this,
the
this, and
certain
this.
thing. Yes. So I mean,
That's
I liked all
that's
kind of the
naturally how
yeah,
this is going to end, right?
yeah.
Of course it is. But
Yeah. So
yes, I do
all the
agree with you. I
yeah.
think Jessica Drew probably turns
Yes.
onto the realization pretty quickly in that next movie.
Yes, and just all these little things just playing into this finale, like, we think Hobie's just breaking shit just to just to break shit, but he actually is, like, getting all of the items so he can build a bracelet for Gwen because he knew that that things were probably gonna go sideways.
He's one of those great punk characters that
Yes, the
don't
fact
care
that
about
he
anything yet
yes,
cares really much.
yes, the fact that he quits before, all this stuff is gonna go down with Miles, he reminds Miles, "Hey, they trapped you in this thing. Don't forget to use your palms." Like, I loved that. Like, Hobie just being, having Miles's back, was just so great to see, and so having this big band, seeing them all at the end, I was really gonna be disappointed if we didn't see, Spider-Man Noir or
Yes.
Spider-Ham kind of be a part of this team. So, even without dialogue, just seeing them be a part and Penny be a part of this team that Gwen is putting together, got me so excited. So even though it did end
Knowing
on a
they're back for
cliffhanger,
the
yes,
third
the
movie.
next one I'm really excited. And the music, oh my gosh, the soundtrack is so good. Our new kind of version of Sunflower with the hummingbird song, really great. The song in the end credits, Am I Dreaming? Like so good, and
Yeah.
it's obviously done in conjunction with the movie, because if you listen to the soundtrack, a lot of the lyrics are based off of things in the movie or using dialogue from the movie. So it was all done in conjunction, which I miss soundtracks doing, really being a part of the movie or written for a movie and not just a bunch of needle drops, and having one
Yeah.
song made for the movie. This whole soundtrack is made for this movie. So yeah.
Always tend to be better.
Yes.
Unless you have
Really
a
loved it.
particularly good kind of jukebox musical or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
stuff like this does tend to have more weight and meaning to it.
Yeah.
I can't speak highly enough of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
A special movie, and 2/3 of a special trilogy, and we can only
Yeah.
assume the last one's going to be equally as great. I mean, it's going to look
Yes.
equally as great. You
Yes.
can't afford to do anything less.
Yeah.
So, all you in your in Sony animation department, I don't know what sort of
Eh, you are doing
craziness you're
something so
doing, but
special. You are
you really
so
are.
special. Yeah. And probably considering this movie is coming out next year, like having to work on these movies simultaneously to get it to be able
Yeah.
to be out just a year from they had to have been because I think this movie took about what 2-3 years to make or something crazy like that because of
But
everything
yeah,
that
because
went
Into the
into it.
Spider-Verse was 2018, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
so.
So, yes, and then we just didn't talk about his parents. I love the relationship with his parents. Obviously, they wanna support him, but they know there's things he's not telling them, and so I'm really curious to see, obviously, there's a lot of love there and respect there, but it's just difficult in terms of the secrets that he has to keep from them. I love the speech from his mother, really also speaking to that, being kind of a metaphor for not belonging, like, don't let people tell you
Yeah.
don't belong in these spaces because you do and you're special, and so kind of giving that speech and then him going into that situation, I think was so perfectly placed. And then, even having that talk with Miles as Spider-Man with his dad, and him feeling comfortable talking to Spider-Man, not realizing it's his son, and probably talking to him like that because he is reminding him of his son and kind of forgetting forgetting his, his agency because he doesn't realize who he's talking to, but it's reminding him of a conversation with his son. So he just is letting his
Yeah.
guard down subconsciously. So yeah, I'm really curious to see where the spot comes. And like I think there's people um suggesting that potentially Rio's gonna be the one who gets killed, so that would be really sad. So I hope he doesn't lose either of his parents in this next movie because I love their
No,
whole family
no,
dynamic.
we don't want that.
Yeah, so this movie was great in terms of soundtrack, animation, story, characters, and just love for Spider-Man in general. Pitch perfect.
Absolutely. I echo that entirely.
Yes.
I really, really do. Now, we did want to end the show as we always do, Janine. That is our full
Yes.
spoiler review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, of course. But yes, we did want to.